We're now moving on to an exciting session with our keynote speaker for today, Dadi Padumjee, Padma Shri awardee and founder of Ishara Puppet Theatre. Please join me in welcoming also Professor Sangeeta Shroff, Head of Department with Nirma University, who is curating the keynote session with Dadi Padumjee today. She's an alumna of the NID Ahmedabad 1976 batch and has also studied in London as a UNDP fellow. And her primary specialization is visual communication, with further specialization in exhibition and space design. I welcome you both. It's an honor to have you all. Over to you, Sangeeta ma'am.
Good morning and very warm welcome to Shri Dadi Padumjee. Arey, ye to puppet hai. So this is our title of today's session, and I hope it would be a rollicking ride and a great storytelling session by Dadi Padumjee. Storytelling with toy dolls, from animating to animating the inanimate. So if we look at the world history of puppets, there's no country in the world, no culture or civilization in the world that has not had puppeteering. So are puppets toys? Are they toys with which we do storytelling? We entertain, we teach, we motivate, we create experiences. So today's session, we will explore this with Dadi Padumjee. A little bit about Dadi. Our childhood indicates strong affinities, interests, and we strive towards building skills that lead to our eventual public persona. Dadi Padumjee, a puppeteer and puppet theatre director, started exploring playing with puppets since his childhood. On training from NID in 1975 in visual communication, Dadi worked as he started his career in Ahmedabad at ISRO with the satellite instructional TV experiment, where he did a puppet serial called Hoo Ha, and he subsequently trained in puppetry under Meher Rustam Contractor at the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts. Subsequently, he developed his craft further with training at the Marionette Theatre Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. Returning to India in 1980, he was the artistic director, the founding director of India's first modern puppet repertory theatre, the Sutradhar Puppet Theatre in New Delhi. His team, interestingly, consisted of both traditional and contemporary puppet artists and theatre artists. Rajasthani Katputli puppeteers and Bhopa story singers, university-educated designers, artists, and performing artists became his core group. From 80 to 86, the group established puppetry as a dynamic theatrical art for both children and adults, creating works, innumerable works, to mention a few: Ramayan, Motu Ki Mooch, Ek Tha Juta, Rangila Rakshas, Dhola Maru, Circus Circus, Monkey and Crocodile, Pakhandi Sher, many such stories from Panchatantra, The Little Mermaid, Him Jhakora, Nina, etc. In 86, Dadi established the Ishara Puppet Theatre, which is now a trust, and created several productions, highly motivating productions combining dance movement, puppetry, object theatre, projections, and musical shows. Dozens and scores of productions have been done, not just in India, but in more than 20 countries of the globe. In collaboration with UNESCO's non-formal education section, Ishara created an ongoing relationship with Salam Balak Trust, a New Delhi-based social organization that works with street children and impoverished youth, training young people in arts and creating shows on HIV/AIDS awareness, substance abuse, and other socially relevant issues. In fact, if you look at a lot of the YouTube videos which have been posted by the Ishara group, you'll find all of them have a social cultural content to kind of collaborate with the audience in experience generation. Dadi, as Taruna pointed out, has been conferred with many awards, two of them being the prestigious Sangeet Natak Academy Award in 1992, and one of the highest recognitions for citizens, which is the Padma Award. He was credited with the Padma Shri National Award in 2011, presented by the President of India. Ishara is also now into cinema space. They've worked with advertisements, they've worked with a South Indian film, and Vishal Bhardwaj's film Haider, they've become a household name. I welcome Dadi once again, not only as a director, puppeteer, motivator, but also as a trainer of designers, artists, teachers, students, hobbyists, who has done numerous productions, and welcome back to this presentation from Ahmedabad. Thank you. Welcome, Dadi.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very over-flattering opening introduction. But thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be doing something or somewhere, something that originates from a city that I love, and a city, Ahmedabad, that gave me so much, because coming from Pune after school and graduation and joining NID, and what I was the batch, the second batch in NID at the Paldi campus in 1971, opened up a whole new world. And Ahmedabad also gave my hobby a new stage alive, and introduced my hobby, which became eventually a profession, through the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts, because that had the puppet section in those days, their creative drama and puppetry team, and would visit this academy in the evenings. And luckily, my teachers, dons and professors, Vikas, Mahendrabhai, all of them would allow me at times to do performances and miss some of the classes at NID. So both ran parallel. And it was in, I think, 1975 that the SITE experiment happened, Satellite TV Instructional Experiment at Space Application Center in ISRO. And I was in my last year in NID. Specializing in film. There was no video at that time. There were no computers at that time. And I got a letter saying that we want to set up a puppet studio to do a weekly puppet series with puppets. And would you be interested? So of course I was interested. I was in my last year, and I was given leave of absence from NID to join ISRO for a year and then come back, finish what I had to do. I didn't come back, and one thing led to another, and from Ahmedabad to Stockholm to Mumbai to Stockholm and Europe and back again, I landed up doing my hobby, became my profession, puppet theatre. The idea here today that we're speaking, I will introduce some of my own work and talk generally about puppetry in India, as well as what constitutes, what the term puppet, because when we say puppet, we're speaking English, okay? Puppetry, puppet. If it's in our language, if it's in our Hindi, it would be putul or putli, or it's interesting because the word pupe in Latin, puppet in English, putli, putul, they all somehow come from a similar source, as in a figure or a doll at times. And we are always toying as well as fighting with the idea that is puppet a toy? because there's a very distinction. Sometimes people say, is a doll a puppet? Is a puppet a doll? And I'll come to that later. But puppetry, a puppet, whether it's traditional or contemporary or modern, whatever, is, as Sangeeta introduced, the inanimate, which is given life. So an object. Today, earlier it was mostly figurative, but today even objects like, well, a piece of stone or a chair or something, and it's animated or it's given life by movement, physical movement as of now, could become a puppet or is a puppet. Whether it's given voice, it's given other things, all that put together makes it into a figure that is, is puppetry. Now, what constitutes the idea? Where does this thing come from? We're not sure, in the sense that the many historians say that India is the birthplace of puppetry. China has produced things of 2000 years saying there is puppetry. But I think most ancient traditions of pieces have puppetry, especially a lot in Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, sometimes Iran, Turkey, Greece, and then of course in Europe. So they all have traditions of puppetry. You will see puppet traditions. If you go down south, most of our traditional puppeteers use the epics, Mahabharata or the Ramayana, and you will also see this as you go to Southeast Asia, due to the Bali Yatra or the trade routes or even Buddhism. And you will see a lot of the dalangs, for instance, in Indonesia, who perform various versions of these epics. And so one can't say where maybe it originated, because another thing is that puppets are ephemeral. They're made from materials which deteriorates, except terracotta, where in some cultures there are jointed terracotta figures. Even this Harappan little figure or the monkey going up and down could be termed as a toy or a puppet. But those are the things that exist. Leather or paper or papier-mâché or wood and all, at some point or the other disintegrates. So what actually is a puppet? A puppet is nothing without the creator, that is the puppeteer, who moves it or maybe makes it as well, gives it voice, and the audience. Because without that, it doesn't come alive. You can play with it yourself. It's a doll, as a toy. But if you communicate through it, it's an object. It's a medium. It's a medium. If I, bring it down like any other medium, like your pencil, your poetry, dance, music, theater. But it's a medium which encompasses all these together. And that is why I find it very special, because plastic arts, design, color, voice, movement, many other things, and eventually communication has to say something. That's what brings this puppet alive. The simplest is this terminology of inanimate, animate, but Albrecht Roser, a German puppeteer, has very aptly put down the idea that a puppet is like a vessel, like a katora. It's like a vessel in which for those 15 minutes, the puppeteer as well as the audience put their life into it. Then it comes alive. It's never a one-way scene. Sorry. In fact, it is very, how would I say, it's never. Many arts today, we say, okay, that's for me, fine. I don't care what the definitely something that you communicate through, whether it's directly educating somebody or it is just doing a visual poetry or color or whatever. It's saying something, and that is what is important. Even without text, with just music, it will say something. It will make you inquire about what's going on. So the term which I keep using, which is interesting, is the suspension of belief. Okay, the willing suspension of belief, as we call it, that you know that the puppet isn't alive, and you know that it's something that's dead, it doesn't have a life, but you know somebody is moving it, whether he or she is seen or not seen, and it starts getting alive. And for those few minutes, if it's worked very well, then the audience believes in the puppet. And that is why very often you can say a lot of things through the puppet, which the human actor may not be able to do. Okay, and this came very true well in our projects at ISRO, the Insight program for Nadia Beach transmission and the Hu Bhai and Ha Bhai, Hu and Ha series, which was one of the most popular community viewing series, where the puppet was a donkey over a fence, and the actor, the narrator, Kailash Pandya, was the Mukhi and live actor, and I used to work the puppet, and the voice of the puppet was also famous Bhavai actor, Mr. Pran Sukh Nayak. Both have passed on. And whatever could not be spoken about in the live actors series, we got the story. And every week we had to find a story from anywhere in the world which would match this topic or this incident that we wanted to portray or talk about. And these two characters were the ones who would, bring it to present day times. And the man, human being Mukhi, always wants to change, but he can't. He comes with, this is what happened, that is what happened. The donkey, the proletariat, is the voice of the people, and he starts narrating the story, and they always never agree and go away. The power of this puppet, or what we call objective theater, okay, is so strong that the donkey in the first one or two programs was considered, oh, it's a nakli hai, it's false, it's not a real donkey. Yeah, of course it's not a real donkey. Communication, which has, grown since then, fast forward, cuts, this, that, language of film was not very easy to understand at that point of time. People were not exposed to it. I'm talking of 1975, 76 in rural areas, even though Nadiad and Peej was not considered a very poor area, but community viewing. And after, I think, the third or the fourth program, the puppet got so popular. Hubai was the donkey and Habai was the man. The puppet got so popular that the studio at ISRO was full of presents, invitation letters from adults, from children, wedding invitations, anaj, grain, everything came as gifts to this puppet, to the donkey. And that is where one realizes the power that a puppet can have to communicate. And you have all sorts of puppetry: entertainment, awareness, political satire. You see that on TV screens just now with Muppets, which are hand and mouth puppets. There are basically 4 techniques all over the world, and then there are a lot of mix and match. One is the glove puppet on the hand. One is the string puppet, which most of you in Ahmedabad would also know from Kathputlis or Rajasthani puppets, work from above. Rod puppets, which are worked from below or from behind. And then you have shadow puppets, which are maybe the precursor to film animation, 2-dimensional cutout figures, stop frame animation. So a lot can be done with puppet theater, as in live performances, but also taking the form and using it in new media, in working with educational kits, making puppets. I will come to that later. What is important here is, and I think what is also interesting that this is happening in Ahmedabad, because well, there are design institutes now all over India, in many cities, but there is a special place in Ahmedabad, and whether we like it or not, the sense or the campus in Pali, which now, as Sangeeta says, is not there. There's so many other campuses, yes, but I personally think that this is a nucleus from where things have spread. And things have changed. I mean, what one learned in Darpana or what one learned at NIB is maybe some of it is no longer valid, but the core essence of it stays. And this is what is important, whether we like it or not. The puppetry that I use has come more from puppets, not just for children. That's where we say toys. A child can play with a puppet. A doll is something that's self-playing, but you have the doll in front of you and you're playing, you're giving life, you're imagining life, you can work it with another friend. But as I said again, a puppet needs its audience. And what is most important for my work in puppetry is the basics of design which I've got in Ahmedabad at the NID, as well as Darpana, and then later on in the Marionette Theatre in Stockholm under Michael Meschke, of puppetry not as an ends in itself, but as a medium which would be connected with other art forms. Give me a second, there's a dog that's barking, I just need to let him out.
That was an animated moment.
Sorry about that. So what I'm going to show you is very often in modern puppetry, traditional puppetry, I will show you a map first. Can we see the map, the puppetry map of India? Is that possible to show, please?
Just
which have traditional puppetry, right, in India, which is still living. So all these 4 techniques that I spoke about exist. And if you see this this map, this is where mostly everything exists. Now, being in the middle or towards the north, mostly people know the Rajasthani Katputli ka khel, as it's called. Okay, Katputli. And even in Hindi, in our puppet has its own name. I cannot call a puppet from Kerala a Katputli. Neither would both of the Rajasthani puppeteer or the Kerala artists like that. If you see, either they are named by the material, rarely by the technique. In the West, mostly puppets are known by the technique, that is rod puppets, string puppets, glove puppets. This normally happens here in Bengal, as also a little bit in Maharashtra, the Pingoli area, Sawantwadi district. But otherwise, if you notice, it's the character that gives a name or the material. So as in Rajasthan, it's Kath ki Putli. Okay. If you see in West Bengal, it goes into technique, Tarir Putul, as in string puppet, or Dangir Putul, as in rod puppet. Okay. This is the only thing very, very special. Maybe it's the colonial influence, I do not know what, but technique. If you go to Orissa, you will see Gopalila, Sakhi Kundai, Kathi Kundai Nach, Kathi as in stick, Ravan Chaya. Very interesting. It's the character which is giving the form of the puppet. So if I say Gopalila and you don't know what technique it is, you will not know, but it is a string puppet. Ravan Chaya, because of the word Chaya, it is shadow puppetry. The myth goes that the gods didn't have shadows and Ravan had a shadow, so it became Ravan Chaya. If you go to Andhra Pradesh, okay, you have Tolu Bomalatta. Tolu, leather, Bomma as in figure, and Attam or Atta as in the play. So it's the play of the leather figure, which is a shadow puppet. The largest shadow puppets in India come from Andhra Pradesh, colored, and so on in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala, Karnataka, different. If you search these names on the net, you will find all the pictures of these. These are actually the states that have traditional puppetry existing. The modern puppeteers are as of now are still mostly in urban centers. Okay. Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Chennai, Ahmedabad, you can go down to other cities. Most of them have come from 2 schools of puppetry, which is very interesting. One emanates from Ahmedabad itself, the Darpana Academy and Mayor Contractor, which is more creative, educational work, and expose puppetry of India to the world, to UNIMA, which is the World Puppet Organization. And from Kolkata there were 3 or 4 puppeteers. One of them is Suresh Datta, who's still alive, and they studied in Russia and Soviet Union of the 60s and came back with a very strong technique of rod puppets. Bengal also has rod puppets, but he created this modern technique of theater with puppets. And most of us, as of now, we seem to find that we fit into 1 or 2 of these schools or this style. More research needs to be done on this. But now many of the new younger puppeteers have started their own thing. What is the we can remove this slide. What is the I mean, definition? Very often I ask, what is tradition, or what is modern, or why do you term something contemporary? Okay. Traditional art form, and we sort of box it, think the traditional, this is modern, we want to see modern, but that's not true. I think there is a line connecting art, whether it's tradition or modern or even contemporary. A traditional artist till now has his milieu, language, color, form, material from his area or her area, and is a generational puppeteer. A modern puppeteer may not be a generational puppeteer. Some are now, but they come from the background of design, of theater, of technology, whatever, and or art. And their themes or their materials speak about their society or about where they live. And they are free to traverse different techniques, while as in the traditional puppetry, they use their own technique, whether it's shadow or string or whatever. However, the younger traditional puppeteers today have also broken free and started using different techniques. This is something sort of a wide general thing about what is it that interests me, or what could be the interest, okay, toying with design, right? I would say design is not just toying, it's a very serious thing, but whether it's working with different things with design and talking about storytelling, narrative is very important. You can say something in 5 minutes and the puppet hears and it will carry on. The main thing is the animation, the movement of the puppet, whether just from the movement or with the text that is involved. I'd like to show you something because of the mix and match. In my performances, I use a form of total theater: music, theater, masks, puppets, dance, to tell a story. And the first one I would like to show you is a piece that has come from a long time that we have. It's very popular because it goes from young people to adults. Anokhe Vastra, and it's based on Hans Christian Andersen's Emperor's New Clothes. Now, it was a recorded track. Many artists have gone through. It's almost 30 years old, this show, and it's bright, it's slapstick, it's crazy, and we're using large masks. These large masks are not in front, they cover the whole head and disfigure or enlarge the human actor. And it's not puppetry, it's on the borderline. So can we see the clip of Anokhe Vastra, please? Yeah.
मिसाल है हमारे महाराज है कैसे कपड़े पहने हैं अच्छे नजर लगे ना इनको मुबारक हो कपड़े अच्छे अच्छे रेशमी धागों से कपड़ा बुनता हूँ मुलायम मुलायम और मैं उस पे कशीदाकारी करता हूँ सोने के तारों से कहाँ है भाई क्या बात करते हैं दीवान जी ने देखा आपको नहीं दिखाई दे रहा आप तो बुद्धिमान है ही अच्छा दीवान जी को दिखाई दिया हाँ और क्या वाह 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 राजा तो नंगा है सुनाई बच्चा क्या कह रहा है हाँ हाँ ये तो कह रहा राजा ने तो कपड़े पहने नहीं कपड़े नहीं पहने
So, thank you. That's just a glimpse of Anokhe Vastra. It's still our most popular performance because it bridges from children to adults. The satire and the basic story talks about how the child can see the truth and adults don't, if you know the story, which everybody knows. But we wove in many little innuendos. In fact, the emperor who comes in and he does his little flag hoisting, you don't see, he's got the flag on top of his head. There's one shot for his entertainment. He wants a television screen and the two antennas come out of his head. And these were subtle references to the time it was wove. The two weavers were the takeoff on two very famous textile designers. One is passed on, one is still there. And it was humor. So it's not easy. Well, I don't know today, but it's humor is humor, and some people get really offended by it. But it was universal. Anokhe Vastra works. It's bright, it's colorful, and it carries on, and we keep getting asked for this performance. This materials that we have used is polystyrene, styrofoam or thermocol because it's light. It's not the best material. It's not the environment friendly material, but it's easy for us to physically carve. Whatever puppetry I have done or am doing still is physical, holding the puppet, wearing the puppet. You have another branch called animatronics, animation and electronics used in films, use things where cables, where sensors work the mouth, the puppets, the eyes. But what's interesting that at the end of the line on the keyboard or on the whatever is a human being eventually. So as of now, it's still a puppeteer or a technical person or somebody handling it. In fact, the puppeteers for today are sitting in Karnataka University, the ones who are operating the whole thing today. So they are also in some ways handling this. Now, in the next piece, I would like to use is another, I would say, amalgam. As I said, you're going to see different things of what Ishara or what my style is. And this one is also a maybe evergreen piece. It's Images of Truth or Satya Ki Pratiroop. Now, this piece is very special. It was in '93 that at IGNC, Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, the late Dr. Kapila Vatsayan, every year in October commissioned a puppet group, especially traditional puppet groups, to make something or a performance in their own language on Mahatma Gandhi. Now, the traditional puppeteers, if it was shadow mostly, could trace pictures and take calendar pictures, things like that. There were a few, and I think we were the first modern group that she came and asked us to tell a story. Now, the challenge here was to say things, and the challenge was that at everybody's heard in schools when you go, you say, yes, we know about Mahatma Gandhi, black and white, yeah, whoa, everything. So now how to make it interesting to see, how to make you aware of things, but without a text. This was my challenge, that we will not use text. We will use world music because the message was, for the world, and flashback, flash forward, objects. The figure of Mahatma Gandhi was the smallest. He's thrown out of a train, and that's when we all know who he is. He's faceless, and the puppet puts on its own mask and then becomes the Gandhi that we know, Mahatma Gandhi. And then different scenes, as it was called, Images of Truth. Strange enough, this performance is performed in India. It's gone into an island in Greece. And the last performance of all places was in Iran at a festival. They wanted this performance. And I said, but you have to know something about history, this, that, and the other. They said, yes, we have a class in junior school on him. And this guy came up to the show and gave me this huge book of quotations translated into Farsi. It's only in one scene that the puppet writes messages. And these are the quotes that we picked, which what we wanted to say. And the puppeteers as postmen take it into the audience and give it. We performed this in Ahmedabad and we'll maybe come back again. So let's see a bit of images of truth. Satya Ki Pratiroop, which was commissioned by IGNCF. And we put in humor as well. Apartheid, color, black, white was done with clowns. So it was a very different thing take on Gandhi. Again, a trailer, they are clips. Okay, so again, a small, what do you call it? A small clip from Images of Truth, Satya Ki Pratiroop. This is another performance due to its theme and the way we have interpreted it, or the way we are telling the story, which is not in a conventional sense, not picture book, this happened, that happened, things like that. It's with music, it's with images, point. What was it? And we asked them, what did you feel it was? And they say exactly what we wanted to tell them. And this is without a text. So the emotion and the music combines to tell the story. Very often I've been asked in my design thing in puppetry that what is Indian in your, puppetry? Why? My question to these people is that just if I wear a kurta or a pajama, do I become Indian? Or is it the way I use the material or the color or the thing? That is my style. So in the modern world, in the modern puppet theater or any other art form, it's how the director or the artist interprets the story, as well as the techniques that are used, as well as the materials. Materials is very important, because this was a question in long ago, in the 80s, we were live on television, and there's a very, very good Dutch puppeteer, and the Dutch are fabulous in surreal stuff, and she was a surrealistic puppeteer. There was a puppeteer from Brazil, who in fact is very interesting, connects a lot with Indian forms and material, and myself. And this, again, the Dutch puppeteer asked me that, what is Indian in this story, in the Gandhi thing? Because of the music, it wasn't Indian music. So it was, why have you used music from all over the world and not Gandhian music? My question, my answer was that the message is universal, A. And in fact, the last piece in the performance, Assassination, when the puppet dies, the audience is silent. This 2 feet little puppet, and there's just 3 shots, and it just slow motion, it collapses. And it's the most moving part of this performance. And then Vaishnav Janato is sung by Madhup Mudgal in the track. And we have these huge balls of yarn. Well, the yarn was cotton torn. And the puppeteers take this yarn into the audience and they pass it on. They connect with the stage. So these were all these sort of tricks, whatever you may call it, or ways of telling a story, which made this performance interesting. One could have well done a type of work that one does. Yeah.
So, Dadi, I'll just, there are several very interesting observations and questions coming in from students. And what you're saying, you could weave into it. One of the students has written that, can you say that puppets are the origin of today's modern toys, which make sound, have movement, and communicate in a way? I mean that inspiration for today's toys comes from puppetry or puppets. Another student has written, has asked you that, how does a designer get started as a puppeteer? And of course, you are a live example of that. And I'll add one more question. A fashion design student says that I'm so inspired by the leather puppets of India and I want to incorporate that into my work. And they are requesting your comments on that. And another student has mentioned something which is which actually is exemplified by those clips that you are showing. He or she is saying, do you think it would help design students to work with drama or theater students to create puppets? And the last one is, how can puppet play evolve in other fields of design, according to you, and what is the future of storytelling? So I've packed many questions.
The many questions. What was the first question?
So first one was a interesting comment, and we're asking your further elucidation on it. The person says that could we say that puppets are the origin of today's modern toys? Toys which make a sound, toys which move, and which communicate to the child or the adult playing with that toy. Is the inspiration for toys, has it come from puppets?
Right. Yeah. I think it's how you use puppets. Like, for instance, puppeteers. My puppeteers make simple finger puppets, glove puppets for selling as a toy, as a plaything. It is not in a story. The shadow puppeteers, which you might be seeing at mostly craft millers from Andhra, they make miniature shadow puppets, which they sell to play with. Play as in a toy play. So it depends on how you want to use it. Now, today, a lot of plastic toys and things have come in. But I think what the design people can do and should do is how to incorporate the traditional puppeteers and their technique and their material and make some newer things. But if it's a design thing, yes, the Asia Society, Rajiv Sethi has made fabulous lamps and very different things with the leather puppeteers and things, not the usual. To get kits made is to design shadow puppet kits, okay? Small boxes which maybe you open up, the screen is there, and you have a set of puppets. The set puppets should be made eventually from leather if it's possible, and which you could paint or color yourself according. So there is some sort of making in that. It's not just putting things together, and it could be sold as an educational kit. It could be sold for teachers, for hobby, whatever. The other thing is glove puppets, because these are the easiest for children or for teachers to use in class, and kits where things are separate in a bag and you put them together. People have done that in some countries. And I think if something like this is initiated, it would give work to the traditional puppeteers. Believe me, all art forms, all artists have had the worst year in their lives, which has gone by. And because all of our things depend on communication and depends on audiences, it depends on gatherings, and that has just disappeared. So there is no work. And these sort of things, if they were initiated, and many of the younger ones are doing it, would be very good. Yes, in textile design, okay, we have used puppets as large figures, giant figures, say 12, 13 feet tall figures for parades, and they have been dressed in, it was for the Commonwealth Youth Games in Pune ages ago, and so all the figures were dressed with material that was from Maharashtra, the cotton, the material, the textile, the sarees. Or if you're going to incorporate as somebody asked, in fashion, then you have the art, or it's two-dimensional, so it's very easy. The traditional shadow puppeteer's art, it depends on how you want to use it. Do you want to use it as just a dramatic thing, as a show, which is not maybe not to be worn always, or you want to take those patterns and do something with them? Remember one thing as design students: appropriation. Be very careful of this, or be conscious of this as well, because there are people who exist in traditional craft and who sometimes are even better than some of us. We take things from them and we say, this is what we've done. Now, this is a very fine line where if it's, if you collaborate with the artist and you make something new, maybe if it's not possible, at least acknowledge the person or where it comes from. This is something that all of us really need to, in our design schools, talk about this appropriation, because this is very important. There were many questions, so I'm sort of a little lost about the toys. Yes, yes, because if you see the terracotta figures, which are like jointed, like, which can move, European moment, right now it's a puppet, and I am moving it in a certain way, giving it life, okay? And that is what is giving it. It's not, movement is not this, but less is more. Okay. Okay. Look, right? It's a jointed figure made from wood, simple. But paper pulp, papier mâché head. We have, as you should know, there are two types of papier mâché. One is a layered little pieces, and one is a traditional method which a lot of people use, even in the Madhubani and all, they make toys, paper pulp. It's the most interesting stuff. I've started experimenting with it in molds, because they would normally make it as clay, and we've made masks. Okay, a full mask. It's in process of being made. I mean, these are what is it? It's just paper pulp, newspaper cut and shred to pieces. And the traditional glue that is used here is methi ke seeds, okay, methi dana, and that gluten. I have used what we call Fevicol or white glue, and it dries. It takes time to dry. It dries, and then I laminate both sides with paper or cloth to strengthen it. So you can make some things of this, and you can involve the traditional artists to make it. Most of the traditional artists I have found, especially from Rajasthan, when they're selling things, making stuff to sell, they buy ready stuff from Jodhpur and, thok se banaya, one sari is cut up and the 20, 30 puppets looking the same. But if somebody works with them, with the skills that they have to create new things, craft sales have it, and then idea, there is a need for that. There is a need for people to do research in leather and in colors, that the colors don't fade on leather. Okay, the Indonesians have done it very well. Here we are using ready textile dyes on leather, or inks, waterproof inks. That's what they call. And what's interesting is the way the leather is tanned. If it's machine tanned leather, the color, it seems, fades, because the leather is very fine. That's what the puppeteers say. But when they scrape and tan it themselves, which is not the easiest, but our puppeteers have learned to do it, some of it, it's a little solid and the color gets absorbed in the leather. These are things that people who want to experiment with artists or with traditional artists would do very well. Animation is another very, very important thing that can be done very easily with shadow puppets. Whether you make the shadow puppets yourself, cut out and join, or you use the traditional art form, from South India, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and stop frame, or even you use your other new techniques and incorporate them. Many people are doing it, but there are these things. Have I answered some of the questions? I'm not sure, because there were many questions together. Sangeeta, yeah. Okay. What we need now is another clip which I want to show you. You saw two. Okay, now we will the mixing of theater, of actors and puppets. Okay, text. This is a play called Heer Ke Waris, or the family of Heer. Heer and Ranja. Heer Ranja is one of the most famous love stories and ballads which come from the Punjab, Sindh, right up to northwest frontier. It's a love story. It is Romeo and Juliet, and it talks about social caste. It talks about honor killing. It talks about all sorts of things in the 18th century. And the Sufi poets have interpreted it, written the script, and some of it still happens today. So this was made about 4, 5, 6 years ago, Heer Ke Waris. And just before you put it on, I'll give an introduction that how do I tell this story as well as bring it to today's life? So the two human actors, a girl and a boy from slightly outside the city of Delhi, are meeting at a dargah and tying the string and talking about love and blah, blah, blah. And the Sufi, the Darwish, there is nothing like pure love. Don't you know, you are not Heer, you're not Ranja. And they said, who are Heer and Ranja? And that is then done with puppets. And the puppet invites the today's Heer or Ranja, the actor, to come into the puppet, hold it and work, and text comes in. And believe me, the text, which was sort of edited, but it was in very, very classical Punjabi, and we did it in simple Hindi, was as real or as political of it could have been today, from the 18th century. So you just see a bit of Heer Ranja, Heer Ke Waris, as we called it. And it speaks about many things. Yeah.
प्रेम किया है, इतनी तकलीफों, इतनी मुसीबतों के बावजूद मैंने अपने प्यार का साथ नहीं छोड़ा, और मुझे यकीन है कि यहाँ हमारी मुराद जरूर पूरी होगी।
तू कहती है तूने इश्क किया है, पर तू हीर तो नहीं है ना?
ओ सगोनी मन भी ढोरा झा, सगोनी मन भी कोई रांझा रांझा कर दी।
कर दिया है, धीदो अभी बच्चा है और है अभी परले दर्जे का मूर्ख। उसने जमीन का करना क्या है? अगर उसे उसका हिस्सा दे भी दिया तो कोई और उसे मूर्ख बना के हत्या लेगा।
खुदा के घर में बैठकर खुदा की खिलाफत करने के जुर्म में तुझे सूली पर चढ़ा दिया जाएगा।
You just seen clips.
So
from this.
I'll ask a question
Yeah,
here
yeah.
which is related. Somebody's asked, how important is set design in puppet theater? And of course, your work shows that, but maybe you'd like to talk about it.
Sure. Of course it is. The performance is an amalgam of puppets. It's, as you see, it's theater with puppets, it's theater with dance, it's theater with movements. So for me, my background comes from Paldi. A lot of cloth, a lot of textile, a lot of textures are used. I have to also design things that are easy to carry. Okay, because the more you make, it gets very beautiful and elaborate, and then you just do one performance because you have to carry all the saman, and it's always a problem. So it has to, yeah, every time when I'm doing something in my work, I bring it down. Okay, can we use this material or this material? This is light, because we are traveling sometimes by air, sometimes by train, and you have to carry all this stuff. So most of the shows that you will see have a lot of material, textile, cloth, and which can be folded, or even the puppets sometimes are just shoulders with cloth. If you see in Anokhe Vastra, the big masks, all they had were large kaftans, chogas, which were put on, which were appliqued in different colors, or the one that had a lot of solid material, in fact, was the Gandhi show, the images of truth, which trunks and things like that. But right now also we are going to design 2 new productions we are working on, and we try to control ourselves. I don't know if that's a good idea, because in the last 30-40 years one has done a lot of things. So one has come to an idea that, okay, what is practical to use? What are the materials that I have that I can use, not just import things? Yeah.
So it also looks like, Dadi, that your group uses light and shadow and imagery reflected on fabric a great deal. So in a sense, you imbibed really the bards of India, because they used to sing at night and use the lamp, and then, so you see that in your work. So besides, in your set, light and shadow plays a very important role.
Absolutely, sure. If you notice also, a traditional shadow screen is a stretched flat screen. I prefer to break away from that. And you saw it with draped things. So that whole set of Heer Ke Waris was lying on the floor. And in the opening scene with the music, the puppeteers themselves pull it up to these different points, and it forms the background. And so we use it as a shadow screen. We use it in, for color. And when the shadow, the figure moves across this draped screen, it gives it more movement instead of just a flat 2-dimensional screen. We have used screens where a cut in the middle, so the puppeteers can walk out of the screen, come back into the screen. It eventually depends on your drawing, your design, what you want to say, and how you want to make it more interesting for the audience. This is what is important. Yeah. Your voice is gone.
You'll show another clip, because then I'll ask another question.
Yes, sure. Now we've got some time, right? The other piece now is Mafarat. Okay, now this piece was done for these huge 3 big exhibitions that happened some years ago in Delhi on Zoroastrianism. So there was one exhibition which came Everlasting Flame from UK. There was another one which came from Mumbai, and the one that was done in Delhi was on the living thing of Zoroastrianism. Big exhibitions, textiles, music, theater, craft, and the performances. There was a small performance called Mafarat, which was on the creation myths in the Zoroastrian religion or whatever, Parsis, as you know, and images, dance, music, and there was some text. Just have a look at it. Again, actors, images, music, right? In fact, the music was composed by a well-known Gujarati composer who now lives in Bombay, used to be in Ahmedabad. If some of you know Dinas Kalwachwala, her husband. Again, this was done on a large stage, so it's not always that we get that stage and that light.
Oh, what a wonderful sight it is. Have you ever wondered whose might holds the earth and the sky apart? What keeps the water flowing and plants in place? Words. Words can be the truth and can be lies.
Okay. Okay. Just to give you an idea, here the big puppets became the shadow screen. Those giant puppets, which were draped, there were two people inside, and you cannot see it clearly in the film because they had lights or torches, LED, and there was shadow representing what those characters were. Now, again, as I said, it's total theater. Puppetry as a means of telling a story, not an as ends in itself. I'm incorporating many things within in the thing. I can either make something that I like, or the grantee, or like an agency or somebody commissions a program, and that's what we make. So it depends on that. Yeah. Any questions, or then?
So there is one question which is where they're saying, what is the future of puppeteering and storytelling through puppetry?
When you talk about future, you have to make your own. You cannot sit on a fence and say and look. It has to be coming from within. Let me tell you my own thing. When I come from not a puppet or an artist family, after graduation, coming even to NID, nobody even knew about NID in 1970, 71. It had just started. So someone said there's this institute, and okay, join. So NID, respectable, because though you called it visual communication, graphics, it was commercial art, and so there was a profession. Today it's of course opened up. But when puppetry happened and the hobby came into being, into ISRO, and then one thing started, there was a lot of trepidation from people, parents. How can you do puppetry? What is this? This is one thing led to another, and it depends entirely up to you, how you use your art form and what you want to do with it. Believe me, it's not easy. Forget puppetry. Any art form to live on is not always easy. Even your design, you're going to work out and make your own name, make your own way. So it depends. Storytelling is natural. Everybody needs it. How do you tell stories? Through dance, through poetry, through music. I'm using puppetry. We already have puppetry in India. It needs to be explored more. We already have 8, 9 states, as you saw, having traditional art forms of puppetry. And in their own language, in their own state, there is an audience. But when they come from south to north or north to south, they might know the story, but the nuances are lost in the storytelling. So then how you interpret it is up to you. The art, yeah.
So shall we see now the land becomes water?
Yes, now this was, yeah. This was our last performance, recent, the most one, which was done last year. Land Becomes Water is very interesting. It comes from design. Neeta Premchand in Mumbai has something called the Bombay Papery. If you are anywhere near the stock exchange, go and see this shop. It is the most amazing collection of handmade paper in color. It's like a matching center of handmade paper. She did research and worked with the handmade paper artisans from Daulatabad, who used to make very, very fine handmade paper for Mughal miniatures. And they carried on until BT cotton has come in. And the problem is that the rags knot and they fall. So the little holes and all. So now they're trying to, some of them have given up. So they have to find out what is the material or rags that are coming for this paper. She did 3 storybooks, 3 kids storybooks on what do you call it, on children's books on the flood. 3 stories of the flood. One is Noah's Ark, everybody knows about it. Then there is the Gilgamesh story from Mesopotamia, Iraq. And then there is the Manu and the fish story. All cultures have a story of the flood and redemption. That means this happened and God put everybody, someone came and put them in a boat and life. So now NCPA came, National Center for Performing Arts, commissioned this, that can we do, dramatize these, but with live music, with a symphony orchestra. So the composer in Canada, Aryat, who composed the music, and online on technology, we were working with music, with puppets, and eventually when Land Becomes Water started. And again, a visual piece. The narrator is the female artist, and she represents water, and she links the 3 stories. All the stories are slightly different till they get into the boat. Then there's the flood. So we had to take images from different things, put it together. Material, figures, toys, projection animation done by Shahaz Ahmad from also from NID, where he used the actual crushed handmade paper, which she had done her illustrations in a book, and that started moving again on a draped screen. Ask questions after you see the thing. Land Becomes Water. Yeah. It talks about environment. It talks about degradation.
Seeds of all that grew, and 7 wise men.
you would recognize all the block prints on the animation from traditional block prints on handmade paper and then animated. All of this is just storytelling, means to an end. Yeah.
So Dadi Bhai, we've come to the end of our session, and I think it was a very fitting to end the presentation with Land Becomes Water, because actually in your work, what we see is theater, dance, music, projection, storytelling, mask making, puppeteering, acting, everything coming together. And I think a lot of the people who are watching this event today, and they are looking at, they are film students, they are filmmakers, animation filmmakers or students, toy designers, game designers, textile designers, fashion designers, product designers. I'm sure each one of them is going to take back with them some inspiration. And what I get very inspired when I see your work is that you had a passion in your childhood, and that passion kind of has evolved and become bigger and bigger. And in that process, you've taken so many people in your into your group. Because when I was reading also about Ishara Theatre Trust, a lot of your performers and a lot of your puppeteers are from the Balak Trust, and it's so inspiring to read their stories. And since you mentioned about the pandemic, I've also worked a great deal with traditional puppeteers, and I've been also concerned that for the last so many months, they've all been without work. And I really would like, and I would play, I'll definitely make an effort that your next Ishara Theatre Festival, one of them will happen in Ahmedabad, and we will host all the international puppeteers.
Yes.
There are more than 8 or 10 design schools in Ahmedabad, and we'll all come together to host this event. So you have a new destination for your international Puppet Theatre Festival. And I really would thank you for this very illuminating session. And Taruna, you or your team, if you'd like to add something for Dadi Bhai, you'd like to say something.
We have what you mentioned about all these different aspects of design and people coming together. Very often we do workshops in senior schools or an institute where we create something from scratch and the different people work. There's one maybe going to happen in the design school in Oakland very soon, and where we put together the textile animation people and create something. So that's possible. Or we can come, hopefully, once Land Becomes Water, to Ahmedabad.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Dadi Padumjee, for taking us into this fun and playful world of puppets and stories. The term puppet has struck a chord with the child in each one of us. Your talk has highlighted the rich puppet culture of India with its varied costumes, stories, materials, and expressions. I am hopeful that your advice and insights will help the younger generation consider puppetry and puppet theatre going forward. Thank you, Sangeeta ma'am, for moderating the session. And finally, thank you both of you for making the time to be a part of the Ahmedabad Design Week 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you.